So just make sure you're actually in the right room. You are here for CovSim. This sounds a very long, convoluted workshop, but actually it's about working out how to do large interprofessional cross-faculty simulation events. So I'm hoping it's going to be a two-way kind of a chat. You don't have to save your questions to the end. Just, you know, if you want to shout something out or you're not sure about anything I say, because I have a tendency to speak quite fast, just stop me midstream. For those of you who are thinking, oh, I'm in the wrong room, I actually really wanted to go to ASPiH accreditation, don't worry, you can sneak out. And also, I'm not worried about you answering your phone or checking your laptops or whatever, so that's absolutely fine. Get your phone out, get your laptops out. But if you can give half an ear to what I'm saying, that would be fantastic. So, without further ado, what I'll do is I just want to show you a little video that we put together. This is CovSim 2018, a large cross-faculty simulation based on an event that happens at a simulated music festival. We have a number of cutting-edge technologies that we're using as part of this simulation. So for example, we have a sim wall. This immerses the student in the music festival itself. It's very noisy, it's very crowded.
It's mind-blowing in a sense because even though I know that it's not real, I felt that way most of the time.
As well as this, we have areas of the Science and Health building that simulate hospital and clinical environments.
The place was loud. We could hear the patients groaning, they were in pain. It was hard to concentrate, so we had to move to another ward where it was quieter, and we quickly made a plan to respond to the situation.
So today has been the first of its kind in our inter-faculty way of working. Students get the opportunity to see learning through a different lens, and that often doesn't happen for students. They don't often come together in that inter-faculty way, and this is why this event is so unique and forward-thinking, and it's allowing students the opportunity to do that.
You get to hear different perspectives, hear different opinions. Normally I would react in a way, but then see them thinking about a different way to react to an emergency is really good for me. It broadens my own perspective.
For me in particular, as a disaster management emergency planner, it is important because I make these plans. I don't rely on other people to carry them on. So it's good to know what kind of people I'll be working with in the future.
There's really strong evidence to suggest that students get so much more out of a learning experience when they're fully immersed in a situation. And that's what we can do here.
How would they plan for lots of fatalities? How would they plan for lots of people being admitted into hospital with serious injuries, and then they've got to deal with their original caseload at the same time? Having simulation learning gives students that opportunity to do that they wouldn't be able to do in an ordinary classroom environment. For our external stakeholders, they get the opportunity to have experiences that they wouldn't have perhaps within their own organisation, supported by academics and that expertise, but also supported by those students who have that fresh new knowledge and are the professionals of tomorrow, and that gives a two-way learning process.
The event today has given me experience that I would normally have to wait for a disaster to experience. It's a good feeling without actually having people's lives at stake.
I would definitely recommend other students from my faculty and others to partake in similar exercises in the future.
Well, hopefully that wasn't too soporific for you, because I'm well aware it's after lunch and I turned that down and the music was fairly dreamy. I wanted to show you that just to give you an overview of what CovSim is. What I'd like to do now is tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about Coventry, a little bit about these simulation events, and things I wish I'd have known before I started it. So, my name's Natasha Taylor. So my background is in paramedicine. Yes, that is me in green. I was a paramedic for many years. Went into paramedic education, went to the higher education sector, jumped ship completely, went into medical education, with a big slant on simulation, and then moved over completely to Coventry University to be lead for simulation there in the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences. I'll talk a little bit about what we've got at Coventry, because what I'm not doing is selling some of this technical know-how or technology. I'm trying to sell the concept to you and to say that actually it is doable. You don't need a £100,000 screen or a 59 million quid building, okay? Now, Steve Jobs said that people who know what they're talking about don't need to use PowerPoint, but I am going to use PowerPoint, only so I can show you a few pictures. But what I want you to do is actually make this a two-way process, so please do interact with me and ask questions. This isn't a teaching session where I stand up and talk. This is a workshop, so please do interact with me. So, CovSim. CovSim is just short for Coventry Simulation. Nothing clever there. The reason we called it a name is that people know what it is. Students know what it is. The people who are running it know what it is. The local media know what it is. We decided if we gave it a name, a nice, quick, easy name, then people would know what it's about. Because IPE, cross-faculty, even the word simulation, I don't know about where you guys work, simulation means different things to different people. So we didn't want to call it Simulation Day, because the aviation people, that means something completely different. The construction people, that means something completely different. So my first handy hint or tip is to call whatever you do something, brand it with something, okay? So where did this idea come from? ASPiH has an American cousin called the Society for Simulation in Healthcare, SSH, and they also run annual conferences. And I was fortunate enough to go to one in January 2017. And I went to a session, just as you are here, where an American colleague talked about doing a multi-professional simulation day for her health students. And I sat at the back and thought, oh yeah, we've done this before and it's really hard work and it's a lot of stress. But some of the hints and tips she gave were so useful that I thought, let's try it, and here I am paying it forward to you guys. So, do any of you actually run large simulation events? Yeah? On a pain scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no stress at all, 10 being the most stress you can ever have in your life, where would you rate? 8?
Yeah.
Only an 8?
And then it depends on the weather, if it's outside.
So if it's bucketing down, then that could maybe go up to a 9, 9.5. I was exactly the same. Running a cross-faculty, cross-school, interprofessional, whatever you call it, simulation event is stressful. But hopefully, what I'm going to talk to you about here today, it's just be the day that's stressful. The build-up and the after bit won't be as stressful, she says. So email me afterwards when you next run it and tell me on a scale of 0 to 10 whether that's gone down. Okay? Any questions so far? Anything you want to say so far? Speak now, forever hold your peace. So a little bit about the university we work at, and I say we because we have some colleagues in. If my Coventry University colleagues can just say hello, so please feel free to ask them questions. I've been with Coventry since January 2017, beginning of January 2017. Before I joined, I actually knew very little about Coventry. I knew it was in the Midlands somewhere. I'm from East Anglia, so the Midlands to me is Birmingham. Coventry is the Midlands' second biggest city. It's an up-and-coming university city. We are constantly becoming top metrics in terms of student experience, in terms of largest university based on student numbers. So we have about 32,000 students. So that is a huge amount of students. Now what I'm suggesting here is, for those of you who come from an HEI, I'm not suggesting you'll get all 32,000 through. Okay, so this is an on-top thing. This is not for all 32,000 students. Okay? So, Coventry, if you haven't been, I would thoroughly recommend it. It's a beautiful city. You were saying about being outside in the rain. Well, Coventry University, as my colleagues will attest, is spread out across the whole of Coventry city centre. So Coventry owns about 80% of buildings in Coventry city centre, and you can walk half an hour from one building all the way through to another building. So for those of you that have got spread out campuses or spread out buildings, this is totally doable. Okay? Now, one of the things you saw in that video, it would be remiss of me not to point this out. We've recently had a super duper new £59 million building open, the Alison Gingell building, that's got specific simulation spaces. So it's all very nice. We've got 2 4-bedded wards, we've got an operating theatre, we've got 2 2-storey houses, we've got a couple of ITUs, we've got an ambulance. It's very nice. We even had Wills and Kate come and open the building. So if you ever see any pictures, you know, we're desperate to stick Wills and Kate in the picture. So it's an amazing building. Okay?
I've been and looked around it.
It's lovely, isn't
Yeah,
it?
because I'm from UHCW and our tiny little simulation rooms that we have there. And it is absolutely amazing.
And you think, wow.
It's beautiful.
It is
fantastic.
It is amazing, but this isn't just for, hey, we've got however many, you know, we've got a whole floor full of simulation spaces. You can do this in one room. For CovSim for 2018, we used, don't tell CovUni, we used one room in this building, a ward. That was it. That was the only room we used. So it's doable, whatever your space. But it would be wrong not to say, oh, look at our beautiful new facilities. One thing I would say, if those of you that work closely with HEIs or work closely with other trusts that do have good facilities, get in contact with them and say, hey, can we use your building? Now, in terms of HEIs, during the day they're probably busy with students, but evenings, weekends, it's worth a try, isn't it? This is where you will ring me next week and say, we're coming down, I've got 10,000 students, okay? So, in terms of building, the building itself, that's another story, that's another headache. So I'll give a bit of a shout out for my session tomorrow at 12:25 when I talk a bit more about the stresses and strains and issues of building a sim centre. I'm not suggesting I got the bricks myself and built it, but things that I wish I'd have known a couple of years ago before we put it up. Particularly useful if you're thinking of changing some of your things in your sim centre. So if you're thinking of changing the AV or you're thinking of using another room, please learn from our mistakes, because we did make some mistakes. So yeah, that's tomorrow at 12:25, workshop 17. So you will have also seen one of the other bits of kit that we've got that actually nobody but construction used. It's this 110-degree, 10-metre computer screen. Okay? It's sort of computer-generated backlit, so this is all computer-generated, this isn't real. And the person here uses a joystick to go through the building site. Now, in health and life sciences, I would safe to say that most of us didn't even know it's there. So my other tip to you is, I think you'll find somewhere in your trusts or your HEIs, there's stuff going on that you don't know about. Now, this seems like an obvious thing to use, but the only people using it were construction. Can you see this guy? He's moving around a building site, sort of health and safety type simulation. So that's another handy hint, is go and see what's happening in your trust or your HEI. Can I just have a show of hands? How many people are here from a health trust? So quite a few. And how many from HEIs? Oh, so nice split, 50-50, yeah. So probably HEIs will have more of these super duper things than trusts, yeah. Hopefully those of you that trusts have a bit of a close relationship with your HEIs. So I know UHCW we work very closely with. So another hint, get in contact with your local HEI and work with them. So, yeah, didn't know we had this, so we use this as part of CovSim. Because computer generated, you can put anything on there. Put any computer generated thing. And for CovSim for this year, it was a music festival. Now we also teach law at CovUni, and we've got the super duper law court that the lawyers use probably about a quarter of the year, but the other 3/4 of the year sitting empty. So how can we get our students to be immersed in this situation? Now you might say, well, if you're a nurse, how can you? What's that got to do with law court? Well, I'm a paramedic by trade, and the first time I went to coroner's court was when I went to coroner's court. I had absolutely no experience beforehand, and I was very, very nervous. Those of you that have done these sorts of things before will know you need as much preparation as possible. So we brought the law court in as well. Now the whole idea of a lawyer and a nurse, an emergency manager and a media student and a CYP nurse and a dietitian, how can there be commonalities with them? They do completely different things. Well, where I work, we have some core competencies that we want all our graduates to have. And these are competencies that actually is appropriate to any student. So in terms of communication, we'd expect all of our students, regardless of what they're studying, to have an enhanced level of communication. Please do feel free to take pictures. If you want me to email you any of these individual pictures or the whole thing, just send me an email. I'll put my emails at the end and I'll send it directly to you. This isn't registered to CovUni, although we came up with it, please feel free to use it. So, in terms of these core competencies, all of our students could get something from. Can I bring my CovUni staff in and say, in terms of dietetics, how would you develop some of these in terms of interprofessional working, knowing that we did an IP event recently?
I can't see them fully on there. But,
so that's the communication, assertiveness, emotional resilience, conflict resolution, role clarification, teamwork, ethical values, decision making and leadership.
Yeah, so I guess how we did it, not for CovSim, but we had a separate interprofessional simulation that we ran, and the students worked with OT and physio, so they were thinking about role clarification, what's the dietitian's role, how would that be impacted on what the physio or OT were doing. We had an ethical scenario that we ran as well, so thinking about how did they work, and I guess the teamwork one as well, so thinking about how do you work as a team to help this patient.
So how do you, perhaps you can clarify, because it seems when you do it, I'm a paramedic, we've had this discussion lots of times, I wouldn't know a diet sheet if it came up and bit me. How do you find the hook that can appeal to everybody?
I think, we weren't sure whether the students would know enough for the simulation, but we found actually by just getting them involved with the simulation, they learned so much about other people's roles, they learned a lot about their own role as well.
So it wasn't, I'm not trying to lead you here, so what I'm trying to say is it wasn't a dietetics specific patient, was it? No. It wasn't an OT specific patient or a physio specific patient, it was a very what was the patient?
I think we have things that were related to dietetics. So we had one patient who was ill by mouth, and the ethical scenario was they wanted to eat and thinking about ethics around that. And then we had just an ITU, respiratory ITU patient. The patient was MD fed, but they were being mobilised by physio. And then we just had an aggressive patient, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Specifically.
So there are commonalities. You can see there are commonalities there. The trick is not to make it profession specific, because what you're not doing is you're not enhancing skills. So you said there was a patient once who was peg fed. Now, I don't know much about peg feeding. I know what it looks like, but that's about all I know. So it's not in terms of peg feeding or even nil by mouth. It's about, so how do you ethically communicate with a patient who says, well, I want to eat, but hang on, you're nil by mouth. So it's not to do with why, but it's the ethical surroundings. Yeah.
And within a team, what we do.
Exactly. And role clarification. I think that was a big thing for us, is it's only when you're doing the job that you find out about other people's role. Well, ethically, we can't send our students or our clinicians out to play in real life, so we can simulate that in a realistic event. Thank you. Any questions so far?
Can I just add, sorry,
Yeah, of course, please do.
Have you got students in the simulation, like playing, being nurses, or are they watching a simulation happen? I couldn't quite remember.
We tried a little bit of everything, didn't we, guys? We tried a little bit of everything. So everything was recorded, which we'll talk about, because we're very fortunate that we've got AV system, but it doesn't have to be a super duper AV system. You can put an iPad up and press record so that people can reflect on it as part of the debrief. So we had a bit so we did a VR one, didn't we? We did a VR one where you looked at a 360 video and then had a critical discussion. The one with the ITU was a SimMan 3G, all singing, all dancing, bleeping, super duper mannequin. We had a standardised patient for the ethical one so that we could talk, the talking could come backwards and forwards, which we know we can't do with SimMan 3G as well. So we did a little bit depending on what the scenario was. And they almost lent themselves really well, didn't they? They were very much, this makes sense that we do this as a standardised patient. Yeah. This makes sense that we do this as a SimMan 3G.
Which students are taking part in the simulation? So is it, if your medical students do the medical ones, do your law students take part, or are the nurses in the core and the lawyers are coming through the hospital bit as well?
So in terms of CovSim, I'll talk about because everybody did everything. Everybody did everything. But what we're talking about there, so what Abby's talking about, is the one that we ran that was just for the School of Nursing, Midwifery and Health. So the same principles applied, in that everybody did everything in the school. That's everything from, we've got physios, we've got OTs, we've got dietitians, obviously, we've got paramedics, we've got adult nurses, we've got learning disability nurses. So there are certain, again, commonalities, because we don't expect an LD nurse to have the same understanding as a dietitian, let's say. Or a dietitian and a paramedic, and never the twain shall meet,
So they're in roles. So the roles that they play, they're an adult general nurse.
They are
playing an adult general nurse.
So I would be a paramedic.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I would be a
We try to do
paramedic.
that. We keep people in their roles.
Yes.
I mean, I tend to play out of roles, but then I'm part of faculty. So
Unfortunately, we're talking first, second, third year, especially, we run with the first year, they're just busy feeling out their own roles. And they're like, I'm not entirely comfortable where I am. So certainly, we expect them to be themselves.
Do you have a problem staffing-wise to facilitate these simulations?
No, actually. Now, I know that can be a problem. Maybe it's that we're really lucky and we've got really good staff, but it's like, well, that's part of what we do. And actually, you guys have always been really, would you say? I know you probably think, I've got 100 million other things to do, but And the students love it. The students really, really love it. One of the other key things is we've got simulation champions from our professions. So there we go. We've got a CYP nurse champion, we've got a dietetics champion, and we've got a CYP student here as well. So, you know, we have the people that are really interested in simulation, and they're the ones that push it. So if you can get those champions on board, you're laughing.
And do you find that it just totally sticks to the simulation, or do you find sometimes it overlaps and it starts teaching?
That's a very philosophical question, because I would say that they're sort of one and they're sort of one and the same, really. In terms of, first time I did a simulation, I did all the talking, and it took me a long time to realise that I had to stand back and just let the simulation take place. And people still say to me, "Oh, should I be telling?" It's like, no, just stand back and let them make those mistakes. And I think that's, as us as simulationists, that's something we're learning. Now, I was able to watch all the simulations, and some people, you know, we have very structured debrief according to whichever debrief framework we want to use. But you know that some people, I'm fairly loquacious, so it's quite hard for me to bite my tongue and not talk. So the whole idea is we stand back and let them get on with it and guide and lead and let them find out for themselves. It's hard though, isn't it? It's hard.
Did you put on...
Sorry. It's great you're talking, that's fantastic. I don't want me to talk a lot. Can I take a question, then a question? Is that all right? Thank you.
I was wondering, because it's such a broad range of different students from different areas, how you're planning and what your quality assurance looks like, that you're actually reviewing.
I will talk about that.
Okay,
So I will talk a little bit about that. So yeah, I will talk about our QA because we record everything. So thank you.
So my question's on a similar vein, really, to say about learning outcomes.
Yeah.
So did you meet collectively prior, and what were your learning outcomes? How did you agree those? Because sometimes those are a little bit...
They can be a little bit wishy-washy,
yeah.
Can't we? Yes, we did. In terms of CovSim, we had the subject expert who steered the initial learning outcomes, and then all the other station leads gave peer feedback until it was agreed on. The students knew before they attended what the learning outcomes were. So they were fairly generic and based on these. So yeah.
Did you, if there was a facilitator that hadn't done simulation before, do you do any teaching for faculty staff on simulation?
Yes, so we have a repository for short simulation how-tos. So for people who are new to simulation, they're just short little 10-15 minute videos of whistle stop. Okay, so how do I write a lesson plan for simulation? How do I facilitate a simulation? Okay, how do I debrief? What debriefing framework do I use?
Yeah.
And that's on our OneDrive that people can get access to. I think also there's no accounting for being there and learning through doing. So in terms of the IPE events, yes, I may go and stick my nose in and, you know, see what things are happening, because for the first couple of times it's nice to have somebody there to say, help, because I wish I'd have had that. Yeah. Okay. So, I'll talk a little about the nuts and bolts of CovSim. Please, my commentary colleagues, if you can dive in if you want to, that'd be great. So, CovSim 2018, the first one was just as the whole Novichok thing came out. So, my suggestion to you is if you do this, build it on to a story. Make it a linear story. It's so much easier to organise. So the story for CovSim 2018, it's going to be different for CovSim 2019, was a nerve agent release at a music festival, which we called Covichok. Can you see what we did there? So this nerve agent release, a linear tale that being at the music festival, then having to deal with the media, then having to go to the ED and deal with the awfulness at the ED, and then being the boss of the hospital, and then ending up in coroner's court. So it was a linear, you went from this simulation to this, to this, to this, all the way through from start to finish. Okay? Now the first thing I learned, if you remember back when I said about I went to IMCH and things that I learned, was one of the biggest stresses is getting students signed up. The worst thing you can do is send out an email to say, who wants to take part, just let me know. And you end up with a spreadsheet and people are going, they're coming, they're changing their mind, I can't do this, I can't do this. Well, the session that I went to talked about this amazing piece of free software called Sign Up Genius. Okay, Sign Up Genius is totally free, and it's used to create templates that people can sign up for anything. It's American, so the templates are, sign up for Thanksgiving dinner and things like that, but, sorry if there are any Americans in, but you can build your own templates and you send out the link and the students can click on it. If they can't make it, they unclick it. If they want to swap, they click swap, and it does it all for them. It also sends the participants email reminders. Hey, don't forget, you've signed in at 10:30 to start to CovSim next Tuesday. You don't have to do a single thing. Now what we did was, instead of emailing all the students, we just put it all on our social media. So put it on our social media, everybody retweets it, there's the link, students can sign up. I didn't have to worry about that. All you do, as it gets closer, you can download it as an Excel spreadsheet. What I did was I downloaded as an Excel spreadsheet and I made it an email mailing list. Just a blind CC email mailing list. Just to say, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. That took 5 minutes to send that out. Just as a way of saying hello, thank you very much, just as an introduction. So that's the next handy hint, Sign Up Genius. I don't work for the company. The next thing we did was we put together a information sheet. When I say put together an information sheet, this took about 20 minutes to put together to make it look pretty and blue, and you can see I've put the collaborative competencies in here and put a couple of pictures on and made it look pretty, and it just outlines what the stations are. So there was no surprises. Well, there were surprises, but there were no obvious surprises. The participants knew what they were getting themselves in for. They knew that it was an event at a music festival. They knew they were going to do a social media or a media station. They knew they were going to an ED. They knew they were going to coroner's court. Okay? And it was very much in a round robin. So, group A went to station 1, then they went to station 2, station 3, station 4, station 5, and station 6. So it was very easy to control, yeah? And, shock horror, we put the onus on the students. So it was up to the students to be where they needed to be at the right time. I thought, there's no way. There's no way. Students don't get out of bed till noon and they eat beans out of a can. There is no way they're going to be where we want them to be. Every single group was before time, let alone on time. So the idea is to give the onus onto the participants. There was nobody following them around and saying, okay, you go into this building and then you go into this building. Beforehand, they knew where they had to be. What you can't see here is there was also a campus map. And I put big arrows to say, station 1's here, station 2's here, station 3's here. Really, they couldn't miss it. Now bear in mind, these are commentary students, so they know the buildings. So that helped a little bit.
What disciplines were the students from who were taking part then? Like media,
Everybody.
drama, anybody?
Everybody. There was a huge range. There was
Yeah.
I could give you a full...
But not
everybody.
Just within a...
Nobody was excluded. There are a lot of health students, surprise, surprise, yeah, but the other range of students, unbelievable. Really, just everybody. So what we did again, to save having to write things down and send information and to get data back, another clever thing I learned were these QR codes. So, these QR codes are just a set of shapes that lead directly to a website. So, we collected data before the event and we collected data after the event. All the students had to do is put their phone over the QR code. 98% of our students, and that's our students in the UK, have mobile phones. So, we used QR codes, and that was incredibly useful. Okay? So there was no pieces of paper. I know we've handed out pieces of papers here. There was no pieces of paper. Directly to an online collection, data collection site. Okay? So as I said, I sent out just a simple email. Took me 5 minutes to put together, just as a courtesy. So I blind CC'd it. I only had a couple of, even though I said on it, please don't reply back to me. I had a couple saying, oh, thanks very much, looking forward to seeing you then. But yeah. So, any questions on that organisation bit?
I just asked, were all the students from the same year group, or were they?
Nope.
No.
Any student. Any student.
Did you have a limit?
Yes. So there were only so many spaces, so we couldn't have a
First
group
come,
of
first
20.
served.
Yeah, we couldn't have a group of 20 because some of us, you'd be standing like that. So, and you know as well as I do, if you're standing at the back, you're not getting as much from it. So yeah, we kept it in small groups.
You must have had to be quite creative in making roles for different disciplines, surely. So did you put the onus on those professional leaders to say, what do you think your particular students could add
Yes.
to this? Because
Yes.
some of that you wouldn't know yourself.
I know nothing beyond paramedicine. I know a little bit of nursey type stuff, sorry. But apart from that, I don't know anything. Strangely enough, the clinicians were the worst at the ED simulation. They were the worst, because what do we do as clinicians? We dived in. Oh, I'm going to have a look and see if this... No, you're not here to look at the patient. The whole idea was to, actually, how do you manage the emergency? It's about working as a team. You've got an overflowing ED. You've got a whole load of patients coming in from the music festival. How are you going to manage that? They don't need to have specialist knowledge for that. Most of them said, oh, there's another ward there. Can we move some patients into that ward? Just simple things. They didn't have to have specialist knowledge for that. So, in fact, when they did have knowledge, they performed quite badly. So we have social media students, and we had a social media station, and they were the worst. They were the worst because they weren't thinking laterally. Trust me, it works.
So did you have managers to do that then in the ED, or nurses to do that?
Yes.
Managers.
So it wasn't... Imagine taking a step back. So senior sister was on the ward, so we had one of our emergency care team playing a senior sister. We had staff in the ward, so you didn't have to deal with the patients. Because if you go back to those competencies, there's nothing about danger ABC or, patient assessment. It is all about teamwork. It's all about ethical decision making. Okay, well, which patient's going to have to move and which patient's going to stay here? It's about those kind of things. I'm not suggesting you can do this for cannulation or intubation. I'm saying that you need to find those collaborative competencies, things like ethical decision making, leadership, role clarification. That's what this is perfect for.
And I think that's good. My background is a leading sister, so that's kind of why I'm thinking about that. But I think it would be quite challenging to put a student into managing, because you don't just become an ED sister, you build up to that, don't you? So I'm just wondering, with the management level, the knowledge of the management student is sufficient, or would you be pushing them out of the deck?
Yes, no. Yeah, in a way we are. So that's the whole point of simulation, is we want to push them, but they didn't have to have specialist knowledge. The ones who didn't have specialist knowledge and who had common sense, dare I say, did a lot better. Because they were like, okay, so what do I do? What do I move? How do I move these patients?
So it's more about the management of the space, and like you've got 10 patients
Yes.
who need to come in and there's only one bed.
Yes.
So you don't need clinical knowledge to know
Not
which
at all.
is. So there'd be a paramedic, for example, saying this patient is really unwell, this patient's sort of unwell, and they make it. No, not even.
It's
that.
not. In some cases, that's what happened. So
Yeah.
in some cases, one of our adult nurse students just dived in and started resussing one of our babies. It was like, okay, I know you're supposed to be here as an adult nurse. Take a step back. You don't. It's not that specialist clinical. There were nurses everywhere. So there were simulated nurses everywhere.
So the simulated nurses would give the students that
Yes.
information. So
Yes.
it wouldn't matter if you were a nursing student or a legal student, you're going to get
No.
it, and then they're
And the
gonna-
feedback wasn't, I have a 23-year-old male with, it wasn't a clinical feedback. So they were primed to know these are students from a whole range. Because the next one on from it was managing the whole hospital. And as part of that, the Prime Minister rang up on a conference call to get a handover. So again, it's communication. Okay, so I've got to explain to the Prime Minister exactly what's been going on. So you don't need specialist clinical knowledge for that. Okay, there's been a Kovichok release at the music festival. I'm at the XX hospital. Currently, our emergency department has got 50 patients with another 250 expected. That's my handover. And something that we regard as very simple and very straightforward, for students, this is something new and amazing. You'd think that was really simple, but actually it isn't. So, in terms of quality assurance, we're very fortunate at Coventry in that we have everything recorded. So we have great AV systems everywhere. We use a lecture capture software called Echo360. Other lecture capture softwares are available. You'll have seen the Smots man. So some of you may use Smots, but we use Echo360. The system's really clever in that it just sends an email to the students. So we can say which students are on which recording, and it sends directly to the student. The good thing is we can say who else has access to this. So me, the leads of all the sessions. So what we can do is we can have a look at all the recordings. Now the recordings only went to the students who took part in that station. So we did a similar thing, didn't we guys, for the IP event, in the recordings just for that group, just went for that group. It didn't go to everybody, okay? So yes, that was our way of that we can make sure that what went on was valid and robust, and the debriefing strategies were correct. The students also, in terms of their debrief, they got initial debrief on every station, a debrief at the end of the day, and also online debriefing afterwards. So that was built into the stations. One of the other things we did was we're a huge campus, so we got a whole load of luminous yellow bands and put it on students so that we could see where they were at any one time. That was incredibly useful. You'd be surprised because some students haven't been to some of these rooms before, so we could spot them at a distance. Oh yeah, you need to be in here. Okay? So these were the 6 stations for this running. We had a couple this year for 2008 CovSim. So as you can see, we've got the nerve release. We've got a social media station where they had to come up with 180 characters in a tweet, 180 character tweet. Then they had to go to an ED and sort out an ED. Then they were management in the hospital. They had to give a handover to the Prime Minister, and they were then in coroner's court. Now, it shouldn't work, and you think it shouldn't work because not all students should get something from this, but trust me, it does work. It really, really does work. I'm going to put my guys on the spot and say, in terms of the IPE, It shouldn't work. Dietitians should not be able to work with physios and OTs. Yeah? Does it work?
Yeah, I think it did work for our students. I think we probably do work closely together, maybe more than OT and physio.
Yeah.
But the students fed back that they, I think one of the things that they fed back was that they learned much more in that 15-minute station that they were at than they would have from an hour's lecture about what's the role of physio, what's the role of OT. So they definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. Amber. Yeah.
We managed to find it, and to be honest, we had exactly the same feedback. They got so much out of it because of the local qualification. For example, we understand what academics do, or having this experience in the alternative department that makes it really
Yeah. But they would say that.
We also had a lot of feedback from your other professions that our students wanted to work the physio, OT and dietetics said actually would have liked speech and language therapy, would have liked learning disability nurses.
Can I say that Abby's just done a bit of work about this? That's probably why you're vlogging it.
Yeah.
Don't mean that in a horrible way. But yes, you've just done a bit of work. So we evaluated it, didn't we? You've done a bit of work about how some professions preferentially work with other
there was more
professions
that they thought would be useful.
that thought would be useful. So do speak to Abby afterwards. And when we talk about live streaming, I know that Amber and Georgia have done some work with live streaming. Your poster is at 4 o'clock. Which room? At 2, over the road. So 4 o'clock, please do speak to them about it. So thank you very much. Thank you. So time is a-ticking, so I'm going to wrap it up now. I could talk about this for hours because I'm really passionate about this.
Can I just ask, did they have to do the stations in a sequence?
Yes, linear,
So they had to,
linear,
yeah.
A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
Just organisational, there's no other way around it.
And there were a mixture, so each group would have maybe a student nurse or a midwife.
With Sign Up Genius, what you can do is you can say, you know, which faculty are you from? So it almost, there's a health and life sciences student, they've got that spot, so somebody else is going to do it. Have a play with Sign Up Genius. You can say you must be a student from this, or you cannot be a student from that. Because otherwise you'll get all the 4 adult nurses who are pals of each other all signing on at the same time.
Yeah. So it's like a mixture of...
You can do that.
They
Sign Up
just fed
Genius.
off each other's knowledge. They kept themselves as a student nurse with their medical knowledge, and your media student would be putting their media spin
exactly.
on it.
Exactly.
Using their organisational skills they might have.
Exactly. And that's the whole point. That's where Sign Up Genius is brilliant. You don't have to sit there and say, oh, Fred Blogs he needs to go with, Sign Up Genius will do it for you. Have a play with it. It's really easy to use.
Just what you do with that simulation is it's a different take on what we do which is simulation where we'll have a sick patient, medical student, or anaesthetist or whatever will create a situation. And it might be that we work a little bit multidisciplinary, we'll have some training ODPs and stuff. We have some from CovSim come out with our anaesthetics. But it's what I tend to think the same. So I know. But yours is completely different.
Me too.
Yeah,
if I hadn't sat in that conference, I wouldn't know this. Which is why, hopefully, you guys sitting here now will be, actually, it's doable. I promise you it's doable. One other thing, obviously, is I'd like to extend an invitation to the next couple of runnings. Please do. Please follow me on @CovUniSim on Twitter. Okay, I'll put the details on at the end. Please do. Come and have a play. Come and have a look. You're more than welcome anytime. Because I think my 2 take-home things, because I know that you're going to say, in a minute, the 2 take-home things that I learned from this, apart from bits of technology and all those bits and pieces, the key things I learned is that you need somebody to be the leader of the orchestra. You need somebody completely separate from it to be everywhere at once, to be cheering people up, to have eyes and ears everywhere. Now, for most of the people in this room, that will be you. And that's good. It will give you stress. So on the days of CovSim, I'm probably about 10, okay? Because you do have to be everywhere and you can't be all rooms at once. So you need one person who's the boss, and make that really clear that probably you are the boss and you are the one leading this and making sure everybody's going where they need to go. The other thing, key thing I learned, is you must keep the time. You cannot let it slip even for a minute. You know, even if you're in the middle of something, no, stop, move on to the next one. Everybody has a phone, so what I would do, as you did there, 5 minutes, I would send everybody a text. Oh, okay, you've got 5 minutes to go, minute to go, move on now, boom. One other thing I want to say is we didn't just do this because we wanted to. We did collect data, we did a research project. First paper has been published from it. We're now working on, because that was, how do you feel about it? And all the students said, yeah, it's awesome. What we want to know is, did it affect cognitive change? Did they learn something from it? So that's the next part of the research.
How did you debrief, like after the whole day? Or
so we debriefed, so we had a quick debrief after each station using the debrief framework that the particular leads preferred. So on the IPE, you used Sharp, didn't you? Use Sharp. Did you use Sharp as well? Which one did you? I can't remember which. So they used the yeah, that's right. They used the debriefing framework they preferred. The one at the end was what did we use? Pearls, I think we used at the end, and then we used a slightly amended, because we have a slightly amended one at CovUni, Pearls, for the online one. So
how many people did you have debriefing each session? So was it one person?
One person, 6. The final one, we had at least 2 people debriefing.
Okay.
The online was obviously 1-to-1.
Was it the person who was a specialist in that area?
Yes.
Yeah. So the media one was.
Yes, was the media, our senior lecturer in media studies, or yeah. Thank you. So please watch your space. If you want a copy of that paper, again, just let me know. The final thing is, obviously, you want to know how much it costs. Yeah, because for you, this is really key. You are the decision makers. How much did it cost? Well, apart from the fancy video, nothing. We've got the space, we've got the people. We're not going to provide refreshments, are we? For the students, we don't want to spoil them. So how much did it cost? 0. Yeah, we got a bit of money from one of our departments to make the video. So we bought some wristbands, which cost about 50 quid. That was it.
How many students went through the whole thing on the day?
In total, so far with the several runnings of it, we've got 80, 160, about 200.
So
on each day?
No. In total.
In total.
And I know that doesn't seem like, oh, hang on a second, you've got 32,000 students. That's why this is an add-on. We don't expect 32,000.
Yeah.
We could do more. I just haven't got the time to do it. But, you know, if somebody else did it, this is why you need an orchestra conductor. You need somebody to drive it. Yeah. Don't wait for somebody else. Because that's what I was expecting. Somebody else will say, oh, CovSim's really good, I'll take it. But it's probably going to be you that's going to drive this.